The towel slipped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, a dry, hollow chuckle, bounced off the laundry room tiles like mildew you can't scrub out. "You're lucky I even let you touch me," Vanessa said. That's what she chose to throw at me, like I was some stray she'd taken in out of pity. Never mind the decades of me providing, fixing, covering her mistakes, and quietly paying off the credit card messes she swore were accidental. She hummed, tossed her blouse into the dryer, and carried on like she hadn't just detonated something. I didn't get angry. I didn't even get sad. What I felt was quieter, sharper. I folded the last t-shirt, an old one from a state fair back before the veneers, before the Pilates instructor with the ridiculous name, before she stopped asking how my day was. I folded it neatly, placed it on the stack, and walked out. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. A giggle followed. Another message from whoever she thought was her escape hatch. She didn't know I'd already started collecting the breadcrumbs. Emails, receipts, training retreat, itineraries that never matched her work calendar. I passed the mirror. Wrinkled? Sure. Slower than I was at 40? Probably. But I built machines that could carve titanium within half a hair's width. I ran a crew of 20 men who didn't dare miss a measurement. I wasn't some fool begging for scraps. And placeholders? Well, placeholders don't argue. We execute. Down in my office, I slid open the drawer. Inside was the oak box I'd carved after retiring, back when I thought gifts were still part of our marriage. It was empty then. It wouldn't be for long. The laptop lit up. I wasn't in a hurry. I never was. She once told friends, "He moves like he's buffering." They laughed. I smiled, because slowness isn't weakness. It's precision. The folder labeled June Justice was already there. Inside, screenshots from her synced phone to the family iPad she thought was just for Netflix. Emails from her realtor friend about fun weekends, whose dates matched her so-called work trips. And, my personal favorite, a hotel receipt from the Burstone. Room for two, not billed to our joint account. Vanessa always thought I didn't check receipts. She was right. I checked patterns. And people like her always left fingerprints. I took a deep breath. The first page slid out of the printer. This was just the opening move. She had no idea the game had already started. That night, she came downstairs in her smug little silk robe, makeup off, all faux affection. "You didn't say good night," she said, tilting her head like she was trying on sincerity for size. "I figured you were tired of touching me," I replied, smiling. She blinked, processing, then rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." I just nodded, slow, deliberate. Because men like me, we don't need second chances. We need evidence. Her eyebrow twitched, just a hair, before she floated upstairs. She thought it was an insult. It was actually a warning. By 11:17 p.m., the house was quiet. Vanessa was in bed, tablet sliding off her chest, podcast murmuring about market trends she didn't understand without her assistant's help. I stood in the hall for a moment, listening to her soft snores and the occasional ding of some unread message from a contact in the industry. Back in the office, I opened the oak box again. Still empty, but the pile of printed receipts and screenshots was growing. It was time to seed the bait. The next morning, over coffee, I casually mentioned I might take a trip next month. "Just a weekend," I said, flipping through the paper. "No cell service where I'm going. Good to unplug." She didn't look up from her phone, but her posture shifted. I could feel her mind racing. Opportunity. Perfect. Over the next week, I made sure she overheard me telling friends I'd be gone. I left a couple of camping brochures in the kitchen, dropped hints about leaving the truck at the airport. It wasn't just bait, it was a camera-ready snare. Friday came. I kissed her on the cheek, tossed a duffel in the truck, and drove exactly 43 minutes to a rented cabin with Wi-Fi, coffee, and an unobstructed view of my own security system's live feed. By 7:42 p.m., her car was gone. By 8:15, the front door camera caught a man with a contractor's tool bag and the kind of haircut you get when you tip in cash. The same man who'd fixed our deck 2 summers ago. I'd given him a beer back then. He'd thank me like a son. Now, he was in my kitchen, opening a bottle of wine I'd bought. I watched for 2 hours, documenting everything. Timestamps, still shots, footage stored on a cloud drive she didn't know existed. Every smile, every touch, every glass they poured, another nail in her own coffin. When they finally left, together, in his van, I closed the laptop and poured myself a drink. Not to celebrate. Not yet. The real fun hadn't even started. By Monday morning, Vanessa was humming in the kitchen, tapping through her phone like she'd just won something. She didn't know her victory parade was walking straight into crossfire. I sat at the table, sipping coffee, sliding a thin manila envelope across the wood toward her. "What's this?" she asked, eyeing it like it might explode. "Investment update," I said casually. "Thought you'd want to see." She opened it, expecting numbers she wouldn't understand. What she saw was a polite letter from my financial advisor, confirming that all joint investment accounts had been split, my portion transferred into new holdings under my name only. She froze, then looked up. "Since when do you make big moves without telling me?" I took a slow sip. "Since I learned you make big moves without telling me." A flash of irritation crossed her face, but she swallowed it down. She thought this was about money. She didn't realize it was about control. That day, while she was showing a property, translation, wearing a dress she didn't buy for me, I started pulling at every thread she'd wrapped around my life. Removed her from the home's primary insurance policy. Closed the shared credit card she used for business dinners. Contacted my lawyer to add her contact in the industry to the witness list for the day she inevitably tried to play victim in court. Each move was subtle, legal, surgical, no fireworks, just erosion. That night, she came home with a new purse and a fresh blowout, tossing her keys on the counter. "You're quiet," she said. "Just tired," I replied. And it wasn't a lie. Building the perfect trap is exhausting. She smiled, thinking she'd gotten away with something. I smiled too, because I knew the same thing. Only one of us was right. When you've been with someone long enough, you learn their calendar better than they do. Vanessa's big weakness, aside from her inability to keep her phone in her pocket when she was lying, was her addiction to public approval. She'd never miss a networking event, charity gala, or Instagram-worthy brunch if there was a chance to be photographed smiling like a saint. And the Stanton Housing Foundation annual dinner? That was her Super Bowl. Black tie, champagne fountains, half the city's real estate royalty in one ballroom. She'd been rehearsing her fake modesty for weeks. I decided it was the perfect stage. The setup took me a week. I started with an email, anonymous, polite, concerned citizen style, sent to the event's planning committee. It included a handful of cropped screenshots from my collection. Nothing explicit, just enough to make the point. Vanessa wasn't exactly the devoted wife and community leader they liked to put in the donor spotlight. I knew exactly how this would play out. The Stantons were old money. They didn't throw people out for moral failings. They just quietly removed the spotlight and let the room whisper the rest. On the night of the dinner, Vanessa was electric. She'd booked a makeup artist, a hairstylist, and God knows what else. She floated down the stairs in a shimmering emerald dress like a movie premiere starlet. "Try not to look too proud," she teased, adjusting an earring. I gave her my best neutral smile. "You'll knock them dead." She didn't hear the double meaning. We arrived at the hotel ballroom under chandeliers big enough to crush a sedan. Waiters weaved through the crowd with silver trays. She mingled like she was campaigning for Queen, air-kissing, complimenting dresses, laughing at jokes she didn't hear. I kept a few paces behind her, chatting with people I actually liked. I didn't need to hover. My part was already done. Halfway through dinner, I saw it happen. She was mid-laugh with the head of the committee when the woman's face shifted. Just a subtle change, politeness sliding into something cooler, more guarded. The conversation shortened. The woman excused herself. 2 tables later, it happened again. And again. Vanessa's smile didn't falter. She was too trained for that. But the shine in her eyes dimmed. She started glancing at me more often, like I might somehow explain the sudden chill in the air. The real kicker came during the donor slideshow. Every year, they projected a carousel of photos from past events, golf tournaments, ribbon cuttings, gala nights. Usually, Vanessa had her pick of flattering shots in the rotation. This year, her image flashed just once, a candid where she was half-turned, mid-blink, then gone. In her world, that was an execution. When dessert arrived, she leaned across the table. "Do you know what's going on?" I took my time with my coffee. "You tell me." "I don't. People are acting weird. Like they've heard something." I said. "Maybe they have." Her nostrils flared. She opened her mouth, but a waiter appeared with the check for our table's wine tab. Vanessa's card on file, of course. I let her sign it in silence. We drove home in a car thick with unspoken accusations. She was replaying the night, trying to pinpoint where her control had slipped. She didn't realize I'd removed it entirely before she even stepped into the ballroom. At the house, she tossed her clutch on the counter and turned on me. If you know something, you need to tell me. Now, I loosened my tie. Why? So you can spin it before the ink's dry. Her eyes narrowed. This is about you being petty. You're trying to embarrass me. No, I said, stepping past her toward the hallway. I'm just making sure you get the attention you deserve. The next morning, her phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from her little network of friends. Girl, are you okay? Just a heads up, people are talking. Might want to stay low for a bit. She sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling, jaw tight. She didn't even notice me drop an envelope in the mailbox on my way to the truck. Inside that envelope, a neatly compiled packet for our accountant. Updated asset allocations, property valuations, and a list of personal expenses she'd charged to joint accounts in the past 6 months. All things that would look real interesting in front of a divorce judge. By midweek, Vanessa had developed a new habit, calling me in the middle of the day to check in. She never used to do that. Now she was testing the temperature of the water she'd been swimming in blind. Every time, I kept it short, polite, non-committal. The less she could read from me, the more she'd start turning on herself. It was working. Thursday night, she cornered me in the living room. Look, if you're angry about something, just say it. Whatever this is, it's exhausting. I looked up from my laptop. You're right. It is. She blinked, thrown off by the agreement. I closed the laptop. Good news is, it's almost over. She didn't ask what I meant. Not out loud. But I could see the question burning behind her eyes as she stood there, searching for a thread to grab. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I'd already set the next phase in motion. Because while she'd been busy managing her image, I'd been busy managing her future. And soon, there wouldn't be one. Vanessa had always lived with a kind of unconscious arrogance that only comes from never being told no. I decided it was time she learned the sound of it. The first cord I cut was subtle. Our shared Amex had been her magic carpet for years. Brunches that were business. Designer bags she called investments in appearance. Hotel suites that didn't have my name on the guest list. On Monday morning, while she was at her yoga class, I called the card company and downgraded her to an authorized user. Then, 2 hours later, I revoked the authorization entirely. By the time she hit the checkout line at some boutique, the little decline message was going to flash like a neon sign. I didn't even have to be there. The humiliation would do its own work. The next cord was trickier because it wasn't a cord, it was a net. Vanessa had her own checking account, but it was padded every month from mine. The transfers were disguised as household allowance and reimbursement, but really, it was hush money I didn't know I was paying until I went back through the statements. I called the bank, froze the automatic transfers, and rerouted all household expenses through a new account she couldn't access. Within 24 hours, the phone call started. Hey, the gardener says his payment bounced. Did you change something? I'd reply. Strange. Must be on your end. By Wednesday, she was pacing the kitchen like a caged cat. Her hair wasn't done. Her nails were chipped, small signs that the upkeep schedule she lived by was already cracking. You know, she said, leaning against the counter. It's funny. Lately, it feels like you're trying to make things harder for me. I didn't look up from my coffee. Lately, it feels like you're just noticing. She hated that. She hated not being able to land the first strike in an argument. But I wasn't giving her a target, just empty air. The third cord was her work safety net. Real estate is a strange business. It looks like independence from the outside, but the best agents survive on connections. Vanessa's bread and butter came from referrals passed to her by a small circle of high-end brokers. So, I sent a few polite, anonymous messages to those brokers. Nothing slanderous, nothing that could be traced. Just questions. Hey, I heard Vanessa's going through some personal drama. Maybe not the best time to trust her with a high-value client? Word is she's distracted lately. Might want to double-check she's not double-booking. The trick with gossip is that you never say too much. You just plant the seed and let people water it themselves. By Friday, her phone was quieter. No frantic texts about showings, no emails about new listings. She was starting to notice. Friday night, she tried to reclaim some ground. I was thinking, she said over dinner, maybe we should get away for a weekend. Just the two of us. Somewhere warm. I set down my fork. Interesting. I thought you like your weekends busy. She studied me, waiting for a crack, a tell. She didn't get one. Don't you want to fix this? She asked. I am fixing it, I said. The fourth cord was her car. Technically, it was ours, but the title was in my name, the insurance in my name, the payments drawn from my account. On Saturday morning, while she was still asleep, I called the dealership and arranged to have the lease terminated early. A small penalty fee, but worth every cent. By the time she came down in yoga pants and a messy bun, the car was already gone. Where's my SUV? She demanded. Our SUV, I corrected. And I returned it. Her jaw dropped. You can't just. I can, I said, standing. And I did. Now, she had no credit card, no steady income stream, no luxury ride to parade around in. But I wasn't finished. The final cord was the one she didn't even realize she was holding, her narrative. Vanessa had always been skilled at rewriting history. She'd cast herself as the wronged wife, the put-upon spouse who tried so hard, until I drove her into someone else's arms. I knew she'd use that script again if I let her. So, I changed the audience. I compiled a carefully curated set of receipts, emails, photos, timestamps, and sent them in a single encrypted folder to a handful of mutual acquaintances. The kind of people who look neutral but live to whisper over wine. I didn't add commentary. I didn't need to. Within 2 days, she'd hear the whispers, see the sidelong glances, and realize the story had already been written without her pen. Saturday evening, she sat on the edge of the couch, scrolling her phone with tight, jerky motions. What did you do? She asked without looking up. I poured myself a drink. What makes you think I did anything? Because people are acting different. Friends aren't answering my texts. And my mother called me to ask if I was okay. She never does that. I took a slow sip. Maybe they know something. She looked up then, eyes narrowed. If you're trying to ruin me. I'm not trying, I said. I'm succeeding. The beauty of cutting cords is that you don't have to chase someone once they're free-falling. You just watch from above as the ground rushes up. Vanessa was free-falling now, credit gone, contacts drying up, image in tatters. And I still had moves left to play. Because I wasn't interested in just taking her down. I wanted her to know who cut the strings. By the following Wednesday, Vanessa looked like someone who'd been living in an airport for a week. Hair just shy of greasy, outfit a little too thrown together. Eyes darting like she expected someone to jump out and hand her another bill she couldn't pay. She didn't have to wait long. That morning, the utilities account, also in my name, shifted to paper billing and manual payment only. Translation: no auto pay, no easy way to pretend everything was humming along. When she went to make her morning smoothie, the fridge was dark. The thud of the blender lid hitting the counter was followed by, "Are you kidding me?" I looked up from my coffee at the dead refrigerator light. Guess the payment didn't go through. Her voice climbed half an octave. Guess? You control that account. I took another sip. Not anymore. It took 3 more days. 3 days of her scrambling, borrowing her mother's car, calling in favors, trying to get meetings with brokers who suddenly didn't have inventory for her. And every day, she got a little quieter. By Saturday morning, I was in the garage cleaning out an old toolbox when I heard her steps behind me. Not the usual clipped stomp of irritation. This was slower, hesitant. She stood in the doorway in jeans and a sweater I hadn't seen in years, like she was trying to rewind us to a time I might be more generous. "I need your help," she said finally. I set down the wrench and leaned against the workbench. "With what?" Her arms crossed, a defensive reflex. "I can't get into the apartment complex for my showing this afternoon. They canceled me as a verified agent. Said there's some pending status with the board." I kept my expression neutral. "And you think I can fix that?" "You know people," she said, a trace of her old charm leaking into the tone. "You've still got connections. One call, that's all I'm asking." I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to shift her weight. "All right," I said at last. "I'll make a call, but you'll do something for me first." Her chin lifted, suspicion flaring. "Like what?" I reached into a drawer and pulled out a single envelope, crisp, heavy paper. Her name on the front in my handwriting. I held it out. She didn't take it. "What is it?" "An agreement," I said. "Read it." She slid the document out, and her eyes moved fast at first, then slowed. I could see the color drain from her face as the clauses sank in. She vacated the house within 10 days. She relinquished any claim to joint investments. She waived spousal support. And, my favorite, she agreed to provide a written statement, signed and notarized, admitting to multiple extramarital relationships during the marriage for the purpose of legal record. She set the paper down like it might burn her. This is insane. I shrugged. Then I guess you'll have to call the complex yourself. Her eyes narrowed. You think you can corner me into? I'm not cornering you, I said evenly. I'm offering you a way out before it gets worse. She gave a short, humorless laugh. Worse? You've already gutted me. Not even close. She didn't sign then. Of course not. Vanessa always thought there was another play, another back channel. But every door she ran to now had a lock I'd changed. 2 days later, she came into my office, lips pressed so tight they were almost white. Without a word, she slid the signed agreement across my desk. I picked it up, checked the notary stamp, and nodded. I'll make the call. Her voice was low. Do it now. I did call the complex, left a polite message vouching for her professional reliability. By the next morning, they'd reinstated her access. She probably thought she'd scored a win. She didn't realize I'd chosen that battle for her to win. I wanted her to feel, for just a few hours, that maybe the ground under her feet was stabilizing, because it made the next blow land harder. Friday afternoon, while she was showing the unit, her phone lit up with an email from the state licensing board. An anonymous complaint had been filed regarding undisclosed conflicts of interest with a contractor she'd worked with, complete with attached photos of her in that emerald gala dress, leaving the Burstone Hotel with said contractor's hand on her back. The investigation would freeze her license for a minimum of 6 months. By the time she got home, she was shaking. You did this, she said flatly. I didn't even look up from my laptop. I don't control the board. Her laugh was sharp, brittle. You're a psychopath. No, I said, closing the screen. I'm a man who got tired of being your stage prop. That night, she tried one more Hail Mary, called her mother, her sister, even her old Pilates instructor. I know because she paced the back patio, voice low but urgent, as she begged for help that wasn't coming. I didn't interfere. I just listened, cataloging every tone of desperation, every swallow between sentences. By midnight, the house was silent except for the occasional ding of her phone, messages she didn't reply to. When she finally left, 10 days later, just like the agreement said, she didn't slam the door. She didn't even look back. Her suitcase wheels whispered across the tile, and then she was gone. I stood in the living room for a while, the smell of her perfume faint in the air, and realized something. Revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just the quiet after you've cut the last cord, and the person who thought they owned you is walking away empty-handed, knowing you designed every step of their fall. And sometimes, if you've played it right, they leave still wondering how much further they could have dropped if you hadn't decided to stop. She lasted exactly 11 days on her own before the first text came in. Can we talk? I ignored it. Not to be cruel, just to be consistent. People forget that silence is not absence. Silence is strategy. On day 13, she switched tactics. A phone call. I let it ring out, then opened the security app out of habit. There she was on the sidewalk across from my driveway, sunglasses on, posture poised like she'd practiced appearing unbothered. Say your piece, I said, stepping outside. She lowered the glasses. I'm staying with a friend for a bit. Little pause. Evan, the contractor. The guy who used to fix my deck and accept a beer like it was communion. Congratulations, I said. She studied me for a tell. When she didn't find one, she got to her point. His company's going through an audit. A city thing. Some permits got flagged. It's temporary. Did you? I don't run the planning department, I said. But they do enjoy schedules. She pressed on. I need a favor. That word is allergic to our history. Her jaw tightened, but she swallowed it. It's the apartment. The lease was canceled. They say there's a clause about undisclosed co-residency and pets. She glanced away. The landlord won't budge. I nodded because I knew. The landlord was a single-purpose LLC the title company filed 2 weeks before she left. I knew the manager well. What do you want from me, Vanessa? A recommendation. A place. Short term. She forced a breathy laugh. You've already stripped me of half my contacts. You win. Help me land somewhere that's not a couch. No, I said gently. I didn't win. I planned. Big difference. She blinked. So that's it. That's it. Do you ever? She caught herself, recalibrated. You always said we were a team. We were, I said, until you joined another one. She turned to go, then paused. What do you want from me? For you to learn something, I said. And for once, not in front of a camera. She left without slamming the door on the past. That's the thing about the past. It stays ajar all by itself. 3 days later, the city posted a notice on Evan's shop. Stop work order. Unlicensed electrical subcontracting. 2 suppliers filed UCC liens. His truck disappeared from the curb. He'd stiffed a guy once on a stair job. Turns out old debts make fine kindling. That evening, my phone lit up again. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just a map. Where does this end? I typed back. When you stop walking in circles. Then I put the phone face down and went to make coffee. Precision isn't glamorous. It's just patient. Vanessa's answer to every problem was always the same. Rebrand it. If the reality doesn't move, put a filter on it. She rolled out a new handle, Vanessa Pure. The logo was a minimalist V with a sprig of olive. The bio said, second chances. Fresh starts. Honest deals. Within 48 hours, the account was gone. Friendly notice, trademark infringement. The mark in Class 36, Real Estate Services, had been filed 3 months earlier by an entity called Olive and Iron Holdings. Their registered agent? Not me. A firm I trusted. She pivoted to Homes by Vanessa. Poof, down again. This time for name likeness and false endorsement. I didn't take her voice. I just took her microphone. Meanwhile, Evan tried to play contractor without a license. Men like him survive on handshakes and blind eyes. I gave the city neither. A packet arrived at the code office. Photos, timestamps, copies of texts where he promised the quick way around inspections. Nothing slanderous. Just math. Vanessa's license, already frozen, moved to under review ethics. Her brokers quietly rescinded pending referrals. One sent her a kind note that read like a condolence card. Another never replied. She tried a podcast. Real Talk with V. 3 uploads in. The hosting company suspended the show for copyright concerns. She wouldn't know this, but I do. Ethics walls aren't built with emotion. They're built with paperwork. That afternoon, she showed up at my machinist's bay, some instinct in her pointing her straight to origin. Grease on the floor, tang of oil in the air. She hovered in the doorway. I'm not here to fight, she said. Refreshingly on brand, I said, wiping my hands. She looked small. That wasn't satisfying. It was just precise. What now? She asked. You've cut everything. What's left? Consequences, I said. Yours. Mine already arrived, I said. The day you decided places like the Burstone were church. She took that in, then surprised me. I miss order, she said quietly. The way you made the house hum. The way the calendar made sense. I almost said something soft. Then I remembered her laugh in the laundry room. Precision returned. You'll have order again, I said. Just not the kind you can schedule. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Before she left, she reached into her bag. A folded paper. She slid it across the workbench. I canceled the Range Rover accessory subscription you loved, she said. A ghost of a smile. Kidding. I unfolded the paper. A handwritten apology, not dramatic, not weepy. A list of 10 sentences that started with I did, and none that started with you made me. At the bottom, her signature. Not for the court, she said. For me. Good, I said, tucking it into the oak box. You'll need proof you were honest at least once. She left, and I heard the bay door rattle shut. I stood there a while, surrounded by machines that only move when they should, and decided it was time that I invited her to a diner because I like places with rules no one argues with. Cash only. No substitutions. Coffee refilled until the world feels possible again. She arrived in a plain gray dress, hair pulled back. No armor. Just effort. The waitress poured us both coffee without asking. Heaven. Thank you for meeting me, she said. You asked for a map. This is the legend. I set a white envelope between us. She didn't touch it. Before we open anything, can I say something? She waited. I nodded. I loved how safe you made life feel, she said. Then I mistook the absence of fireworks for the absence of fire. She swallowed. I don't deserve your time. But I'm asking for it anyway. Good, I said. You're finally asking for the right thing. She stared at the envelope. What is this? Another trap? A timeline, I said. And a choice. She lifted the flap carefully. Inside, a single ticket, no logo, just an address and a time. Next Friday, 7 p.m., the ballroom of the Stanton Housing Foundation. Her eyebrows rose. They'll let me in? They'll let us in, I said. She put the ticket down like it might sprout legs. Is this where you ruin me in public? Because if it is, say it. I can still stand up straight. If I wanted to ruin you in public, I said, I'd have picked a louder room months ago. She exhaled, relief and dread braided together. Then what is it? The last move, I said. Against who? I'll let the waitress refill our cups. We sat in the kind of silence that isn't awkward. It's structural. Finally, she said, you're impossible to read. I'm not a mystery, I said. Just a man who stopped narrating for your benefit. She nodded, slipped the ticket back into the envelope, and stood. Next Friday, then. Where's something you won't mind remembering? I said. She gave me that look I hadn't seen in years, the one that said she didn't understand me, and for once didn't resent me for it. Then she left, the bell over the door giving a tiny, old-fashioned chime like a period at the end of a righteous sentence. I sat there a minute longer, tracing rings of coffee on Formica. The oak box was heavy in my mind. The envelope she'd given me, her 10 sentences, waited there like a keystone. Next Friday would be clean. Not loud. Clean that we arrived separately. I watched her pause at the threshold of the Stanton ballroom. Same chandeliers, new steaks. She looked good. Not expensive good. Composed good. I greeted a few board members. Funny how people warm up when your donations migrate from quiet to named. An usher led us toward the small stage, not the big one, not the donor spotlight. A side stage with a lectern and a screen. Vanessa leaned toward me. If you're going to blindside me, do it quickly. No blindsides, I said. Only mirrors. The MC spoke briefly about community rebuilding and the cost of hidden damage. Then he gestured to me. I stepped up, adjusted the mic, and looked out at the room that had once quietly removed Vanessa from a slideshow. Good evening. I won't take long. I told them I built machines that don't tolerate slop. That lives shouldn't either. I said people fail, and then decide whether to be a hazard or a warning. Then I clicked the remote, and the screen behind me lit up. The Vanessa Initiative. Small caps. Clean font. No flourish. Subheader, legal aid and transition grants for spouses leaving coercive infidelity. A ripple moved through the crowd. Vanessa didn't flinch, she froze. The fund launches tonight, I said, seated with the proceeds of assets returned by the undersigned. I glanced at her. Not long, just enough. And structured to grow every time someone chooses honesty over theater. The next slide appeared, a simple scan page with a familiar signature. Redactions covered names, but not verbs. 10 sentences that started with I did. I didn't read them out. I didn't need to. The room understood. More importantly, Vanessa did. Her hand went to her throat, then stopped halfway, hovering like she'd reached for jewelry she no longer wore. This isn't a pillory, I said. It's a blueprint. The first grant tonight goes to a woman who spent 12 years being told she was imagining things. She wasn't. I gestured to the coordinator at the side curtain. A soft, private applause swelled as a recipient accepted an envelope. No cameras. Dignity is sharp when you keep it quiet. I clicked to the next slide. Transparency matters, I said. So here's mine. The Olive and Iron holdings that paid for this room also acquired certain debts and trademarks related to behavior that broke trust. As of this week, those assets have been liquidated. The supplier, Evan Stift, paid, with interest. The apprentice he underpaid, compensated from the sale of the work van. Vanessa's eyes widened. She wasn't expecting mercy that felt like a verdict. And the apartment where someone crashed for a bit. I continued. That building now belongs to this fund. Every rent check from units A through H goes straight to legal fees for people who need an exit more than they need an audience. No applause that time. Just a current of realization. I closed the remote, let the quiet settle. Cruelty is easy, I said. Precision is harder. Tonight is not revenge. It's relief, with receipts. Then I stepped aside. The MC returned, thanked donors, moved the program on. The room exhaled and broke into small conversations, some about us, most not. That's how grace works. It doesn't cue the orchestra. Vanessa and I met in the shadow of the stage lights, out of the sight lines, where her voice could be real. You turned me into a fund, she whispered. No anger, just awe and something like grief. No, I said. You turned us into a reason. I turned it into an instrument. Her eyes shone. She wasn't the villain in her mind anymore. She wasn't the victim either. She was a lesson, one I'd made portable. You could have destroyed me, she said. I shook my head. That would have been loud. This is permanent. She swallowed. People will search my name, and this will come up. Every time, I said. And every time, someone else gets out with their sanity intact. That's the point. She reached into her clutch, pulled out a small card, and placed it in my hand. For your fund, she said. A donor. Her name. No logo. Just a monthly amount that wasn't small. I looked at the card, then at her. Keep the receipt, I said. You'll want proof you did something right more than once. She nodded. You always were one step ahead, she said, not bitter, just factual. Only because you kept leaving footprints, I said. We stood there a moment, two people lit by a cause neither had intended to start. Then she straightened. So this is the end. It's the end of our story, I said, and the start of a better one for people who need it. She took a breath, a long, steadying one, then slipped into the crowd. Not fleeing, moving. Different verbs matter. I walked to the back of the ballroom, sat for a minute, and let the noise of silverware and low conversations wash over me. The oak box waited at home, a simple thing with brass hinges, now holding a piece of paper with 10 sentences and the last of my anger. This wasn't the revenge most people expect. No fireworks, no wreckage, just a future she'd never outrun, tied to a purpose that would outlast both of us. Cruel? Yes, because every time she tried to rewrite the past, the present would remind her what it funded. Unexpected? Maybe. People think the opposite of love is hate. It isn't. It's design. And I've always been good at that.